If you're feeling comfortable with components, instances, and variants, then we can now jump in the second part of our course project. We want to turn the design that we created into a component-based reusable design. You can either use whatever your solution is from the first part, or you can simply copy my suggested solution from up here, which is what I did for you. And so how I go about is I go through my design and then simply pull out the elements that I think would make sense as reusable components. Now there is no one right or wrong, it's up to you, and you can also change this or in the future nest items differently. But we need to start somewhere, so I'm going to show you how I approach this. So I went bit by bit. For example, I started with my hero section, and because I'm reusing this image over here, I actually took this inner part out. So I selected all of this. Let me actually get a little closer here. So I select the image, the text, and the button, and I hit Command G or right click and turn into a frame. And I am now taking this apart. So you can see down here, I just called this info. So this is what I created here. Then I did the same for the other elements. I took out the top bar, then the down bar for the overlay. So this is this here. And I went through it bit by bit. So this image, then I have my cards, obviously my tab bar, my elements here. And this is actually up to you how you want to set this up. So here, for example, I use this as one component. You might also have this as one component and loose text. As I said, there's no right and wrong. I just find it a little more comfortable as I'm probably going to be reusing this part quite a bit. And I decided to then do the same for the play bar. So all of this control area is one component. Again, later on, you could have this as a nested component, this as a nested component. It's up to you, but let's keep it simple for now. Now in this file, I have my final solution. If you go to pages, you see the final design, and you also see a component page. So here you can see all the components, how I organized them, set them up, named them, and so on. And this is what I am using in my final design. So I suggest that you're not getting confused with my components, to just copy all of this over to a new file. So let's actually select my examples as well as the pull out potential components I created, and let's jump to a new design file and simply paste this here. I quite like to have my background a little lighter. And by the way, you can change this if you click on the canvas, then you can see up here on the page, you can change the color. I just find that a little more comfortable. So now you can have your own file with your components without getting confused with the same naming. I can either select each of those individually and then turn them into components, or I can select all of them, click on the little drop down and create multiple components. Not component set, that's something else as we know now, but multiple components. Now, some of these components I am nesting, for example, the icons. So I just need to clean that up because this one is not going to know that you want it to be nested. So I'm just going to pull an instance up here of this one and of this one. And I am now going to replace these elements here with their nested counterparts, keeping it all nice and clean. So we would do that for all the icons. Let me have a look. So for example, for our play button here, we would also replace that with an instance, and we have the same one here. So you can see already we're like reusing, which is really nice. So if we would change anything in that play button, this would be the same everywhere. This one could be a scaled play button still, or you could have this as an own component. Again, up to you. Okay, now we need to set up these designs again with the components. Now that sounds tedious, but it's actually quite fast. So let's do that. Let's get rid of this. And I'm simply gonna drag our cover over here. and then our info. And then I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to delete those and I'm going to replace them with instances. What we need to do, of course, is we need to place our images again. Also, I'll probably do this a little tidier than I am working here. Keep my distances and everything, but just to doing that, just to show you quickly, have it like this. We need our images, so let's go back here and we can simply copy our images to this file so we have them at hand. Because what I would do anyways, I would probably like get rid of the images in my components. So also be careful to always grab the image and not our little gradient overlay that we made. And now I need to add a fill back. And so this is indeed a little tedious. We would need to place those images again. So we would, in our components, have them nice and neutral, and then in our design, we'd have to redo our images. But like this, we can pretty quickly set up our design again, as you'll see. And any changes, obviously, because now this is component-based, will just follow, and it will be really easy to keep everything updated. Then let's just grab our tab bar as well. And you can see, just like this, I have now my same design as a component-based design. And I would do the same for my other pages. To work, it's fine to have everything on one page, but remember, we do want our components to be stored away. So under pages, make sure that you make an own page called components. And you can now send your components over there, either by selecting all of them, right-clicking, and going to move to page and components, or you can cut them, which is Command and X, not Command and copy, it must be X. And you can now paste them on here, and they will keep the connection. So if, for example, if you're clicking on here, you can now click on the little component icon, and it will jump to your main component on the page. Remember, we do want to store our components on sections. Sections are up here under frames. So we want to create sections, for example, one for icons, and then place all our icons up here, then one for navigation, and so on. You can go to your exercise file in components and guides, and here you'll get an idea of how I organize my components. And by the way, I am using a little file handling system I created. You don't have to use this, but you can use this. So I have like headlines, and I have little bubbles here, so I can toggle whether something is on or in the making. And I also have little sticky notes to add comments. Also remember that we have component sets. So here I now organized our components we created, and I have my back bar and my overlay bar pretty similar, so I can combine them as variants, for example. So if I use them in my design, then you can see here I'm having a little drop down to toggle between them. You don't have to do that, but it's nice if you have similar items and want to organize them, as we discussed in our previous sessions. So in the end, our design is entirely made up out of instances, except maybe some text here and there. And remember, in instances we can override, so we were overriding all the image fill, so adding all the images, and we can also do the same with text. So we can, for example, change the name of the albums here. If you want these little 3 dots here, if something is too long, then you can do this. Let's jump back to our components. You can do this by selecting the name, and then also go to the extras, and down here you find the text that cuts off with the little dots. And remember, any change in a component, let's for example turn this one here around, will result in a change in the instance.